So one of my favorite Ubisoft franchises is the Far Cry series, and I wanted to know more information about when exactly are we going to be getting Far Cry 7 or the next Far Cry game, whatever it may be, especially after I did seemingly enjoy Far Cry 6. However, I thought that there wasn't enough of the main villain Giancarlo Esposito in the game, where I thought that the game would be very heavily based on him, but it wasn't, because I guess he was too expensive, and you kind of see him at the beginning and then more towards the final missions of the game. So in terms of Far Cry 7, where is it? Well, according to comicbook.com, they say that Far Cry 5 was Ubisoft's best-selling game last generation, so talking about PS4 and Xbox One. Despite being divisive among both critics and consumers, unfortunately Far Cry 6 didn't carry forward this momentum, and it does seem like that, according to a lot of YouTubers and their videos, that a lot of people did not find Far Cry 6 favorable. It was just more of the same, is the saying I heard a lot of them say, and I personally would agree with that, definitely. It doesn't seem to have sold as well, and its reception was far from the highs of the series has seen with previous games such as Far Cry 3, the best Far Cry that would be, and Far Cry 4 was great. It wasn't that bad either. That said, Far Cry 6 doesn't change the fact that it's still one of Ubisoft's biggest series, and it's obviously going to continue, whether with another mainline game called Far Cry 7 or something new and different, which we'll get more into a little bit sooner in the video. The key here though is that it's not even being revealed, and yet we are already hearing reports that it's having some form of development issues and is missing milestones. There's no way to know for sure, but the hints at a game that's at least a few years away. So why is this game having some development issues and missing milestones? Well, according to GamesBeat on November 11, 2021 through Twitter, Far Cry creative director Dan Hay is leaving Ubisoft. And then Jeff Grubb, who is a known and reliable insider, he says that Dan Hay was overseeing the next Far Cry, which is intended as a Far Cry live service project similar to Assassin's Creed Infinity. Now, Ubisoft made a statement on internal delays according to Kotaku, and they said, "We don't comment on rumors or speculation," reads the reply. Ubisoft has unmatched creative and production capacities with more than 20,000 talented people collaborating across our global studios on game development. Thanks to them and to our long-term approach and appetite for taking creative risks, we have built some of the industry's strongest proprietary brands and have promising new brands and products on the horizon. We also have one of the industry's deepest and most diversified portfolios, cutting-edge services and technologies, and a large and growing community of engaged players, and that they most certainly do have. As a result, we're ideally positioned to capitalize on the rapid industry growth and platform opportunities that are emerging right now. So they never really gave much more details. They're just kind of like bigging themselves up a little bit. So they never really gave any insight to what's actually going on, but I guess we're going to have to take Jeff Grubb's word, who is very reliable, and the fact that it does seem like fact that Dan Hay and their creative manager the head manager on the Far Cry series has left, and that is what's causing the problems over in the development sphere of the next Far Cry mainline game. Now, what is the potential of the next Far Cry game? What could it be? Is it a mainline game or is it a spin-off game? If we look at past Far Cry games, Far Cry 4 having the spin-off game Far Cry Primal, Far Cry 5 having New Dawn, Far Cry 6 seemingly should get a spin-off title towards around probably the end of 2023, and maybe we could see Far Cry 7 during 2024 or 2025, but I think we might even get that a little bit later, and I think they want to let the Assassin's Creed Infinity stuff come out and see what the reception and how it goes and how smoothly this whole process of the Infinity landscape and the Infinity infrastructure is handled, and how they can convert that or copy and paste that into the Far Cry franchise. Now, I thought that Far Cry 6's Lost Between Worlds DLC, which came out December 6, 2022, were alongside a Game of the Year edition was going to be the kind of spin-off sequel, and that Ubisoft weren't going to actually make a spin-off game, but rather keep on introducing DLC expansions. And Lost Between Worlds seemed, before we got gameplay, before we got the reveal, it seemed like this could be the new spin-off game, and it continues the story of Danny. However, this was still kind of like a roguelike DLC, similar to the DLC which was featured with villains in the season pass of Far Cry 6, which still makes room for a Far Cry 6 spin-off game. I mean, they could still use these assets in the beautiful, beautiful world of Far Cry 6. I would definitely pay top dollar, or not top dollar, mid-range dollar for a Far Cry 6 spin-off game. And all signs point to a Vaas Montenegro spin-off title. Now, Vaas was heavily teased at the end of Far Cry 6's main campaign. He also had a secret ending in his DLC, as well as appearing at the end of the Stranger Things DLC. Now, I feel like with them designing an old man Vaas and kind of teasing Vaas, it would only make sense in order to reuse the assets of Far Cry 6 is to give Vaas a spin-off game. Whether you play as Vaas or someone alongside Vaas, where we can kind of see more of the acting and performance capture of Michael Mando as the character Vaas. I would really love a story about redemption and addiction to violence in terms of Vaas, his character arc and what he may do. Also, I think there's room to explore multiple endings. Perhaps you get an ending where he can team up with the island of Yara's Libertad, team up with Danny or meet Danny in a mission or in a couple of missions, or choose the route of violence and rage. Michael Mando also states in a Dan Allen Gaming podcast he would like to go back to discover who Vaas was before he went insane and before the Mohawk, and kind of like his origin story. And I think that would also be a very cool way to go in terms of Vaas. But I would also say that I don't think they would do that with a spin-off game. Again, they would have to reuse the assets, and I think just continuing to have this present day Yara and Vaas on this island and to see what he does next. I think they kind of teased a sequel story to Vaas and what he's up to now, rather than going back to before he became crazy. And I would like a prequel kind of game of Vaas, but I would also say you could add flashbacks and all that kind of stuff into this sequel game and kind of explore Vaas's character in depth with a sequel spin-off Far Cry game centered around Vaas Montenegro. So that's the spin-off game. What about the mainline Far Cry game? Well, as previously stated before, Jeff Grubb says that Dan Hay has left, and he was kind of front and center in spearheading the next Far Cry game, Far Cry 7. And it seems like they are going to be going the live service route. Now, according to Games Radar, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier has said that fans should expect something very different from the 7th mainline game in the series. Speaking on his Triple Click podcast, which he co-hosts, Schreier said of a Far Cry 7, "From what I have heard, if I remember correctly, they're aiming to go a radically different direction for Far Cry after Far Cry 6. So I think it only makes sense